Hello and welcome to the latest edition of The Hex with Daniel Robertson, Armand Kafai, John Arnold. Before we get started, don't forget, hit the thumbs up if you are listening on podcast. Don't forget to subscribe, give us a 5-star rating on Spotify. Helps us quite a bit. Give us a comment. Let us know what you are thinking. We are seeing the numbers grow quite a bit across channels, especially on YouTube. So appreciate everyone tuning in. Now we have got plenty of CONCACAF Nations League to get to. MLS has fired one of their coaches. We've got 6 topics. This is the Hex. What an interesting few days it has been in CONCACAF. Mexico is the reigning champions of pretty much everything in the region now. They defeated Panama in the final 2-1 yesterday and defeated Canada 2-0 in the semifinals. John, Raul Jimenez has all the goals.
Oh,
Mexico has all the trophies. Is it too hasty to say Mexico is back?
I think it is. I think it is. I think I'm having a little trouble framing the sort of like where I feel that Mexico is right now because I think they're clearly the best men's national team in CONCACAF. I think they have the best present and they have the best future. When you look at the youth tournaments that they've won as well, the fact that there's a pretty young roster that's doing this, although led by Raul Jimenez. But I think it's a little, I'm pushing back a little on this idea that Mexico is at the top of the heap, the kings of CONCACAF, in the same way that the US was in the last few years, in the same way that Mexico was during their glory days, because I don't feel like they've been able to build that gap between the pack. I think Mexico's in front, but that chasing pack, I think, is right there nipping at their heels. And I think Mexico would say the same. If Mexico goes and wins the Gold Cup, if they have convincing performances in that tournament, then I think I'd probably be ready to say, yes, they're absolutely far and away the clear best team. And in a dominant fashion, they are back to their glory days. But right now, I think that it is hasty to say, yes, they're where they were used to being. They're back on their perch. I've seen some people say, I think like maybe I'm trying to draw too cute of a line, but to me, it's a difference.
Yeah, to me, what they have right now is the mental edge on the rest of CONCACAF because there's two conversations to be had. Is Mexico back in CONCACAF, and is Mexico a clear favorite to advance in the World Cup? I think those are two very different conversations. But right now, Armand, Mexico's they look like they have got the confidence and they have got the ability on the field.
What kind of sucks is, I mean, I was able to catch up and watch the Mexico Panama game and
That
also
does suck.
uh bits, yeah. And bits the other ones. I mean, first off, guys, can we talk about that gift that Mexico relieved late on in the game? I mean,
Sure.
that was I've never seen a handball like it where he just hand reached out, that ball was going clearly out for a corner, just boom, hits it, and it's obvious it's a clear handball, clear as day. I wasn't really impressed by their performance, but they won a tournament. That's all that really matters in international football. You just winning those tournaments are the key thing. Doesn't matter how you do it. Style points doesn't matter. You still end up with the trophy. You still win. And in my opinion, I haven't been really impressed by the Mexico side, but they are getting it done under Javier Aguirre. And the difference between him and Mauricio Pochettino, which I know we're going to talk about later, is that he's coached international football before. We're kind of seeing Pochettino try things differently, etc. Aguirre knows how to get the results in the right ways, and you get Raul Jimenez back. He's been super impressive, super important. They're still trying to get, around, they're still trying to figure out some of the kinks in the roster, right? I feel like they were kind of out of ideas against Panama until the handball occurred.
Fair. That's fair.
I think Panama was really organized and really well. And I think they were the team that I was kind of like, wow, this was a really good performance from them. And even though I don't think their talent on their roster is that great, they were set up to be successful. And comparing, saying they're the kings at CONCACAF, and I have to agree with John. When we saw the U.S. dominate, we saw them dominate, and we could clearly say, "Hey, this team was clearly the best team in the region." With Mexico, you don't really get that feeling. I don't know how to kind of put it into a more, I guess, scientific way of saying things, but you don't feel
They
that
weren't
same kind
dominating
of dominance.
possession. The numbers against Canada were not that impressive. Like if you took the teams off of and you just looked at the numbers, and it was basically the same against Panama. Is that kind of what, I'd say that's kind
Yeah,
of
you can be the champions without being dominant. You can be the champions without us saying you are the kings of the region. No one can touch you. They're the holders of both tournaments. Like I think that's the hard thing is that like it would be easy for Mexico fans to say, well, you're drawing a line that doesn't exist. You're a upset American, whatever. most people who watch the Mexico national team, most fans of Mexico, and I think Mexico itself, listening to like Raul Jimenez after the game, he brought up immediately, hey, this has been what we've been aiming for since that loss in Honduras. Don't forget, they went down in this tournament, in the quarterfinals, and lost in San Pedro Sula. They looked really bad in that game. And even until the second half of the second leg of that series, it looked like Mexico might have missed the Final Four. So I think that's where I think, you know what? I'm not trying to take away from anything they did. They're the champions. They've got the trophies. They've got the name. They're number one. Put them number one in the power rankings. Put them number one in the CONCACAF rankings. But I still think that this team has plenty of room to grow if they're going to reach their goals at the 2026 World Cup, which is the standard that they themselves want to be judged by.
And John, you wrote about this on the Get CONCACAF newsletter. In sports, right? There's one position that is paid higher in every team. In football, it's the quarterback. In soccer, it is the number 9. There's a reason why the forwards are paid the most, and it's because you see the ceiling that Mexico can approach when they have Raul Jimenez, and you look in Mexico's different eras of glory days when Chicharito was playing at his best, when Cuauhtemoc Blanco, not that he's really a number 9, but when Cuauhtemoc Blanco was playing at his best. But you know what I mean? Like when they
A
have
finisher,
that forward,
a dominant attacker who can score goals.
yes, and that's got to be the biggest, if you're looking for a positive for Mexico, that's got to be the biggest positive, right? Is that they have that now.
Absolutely. No, and not only that, but like the fact that, we came into this podcast talking about like, oh, well, Santi Jimenez needs to step up because who else is going to do it for Mexico? Oh, right. Raul, who also stepped up for them in November. And Santi playing with Raul in that 2 forward front that Aguirre tried out, I think gives Raul space to operate. And he said after the game, I like it. It clears space. I don't have to worry about, figuring out how to beat a 5-man back line by myself because I know that they're going to be occupied by Santi as well. And I think it gives Santi the confidence to feel like I was going to say like a little kid's being like, I'm helping, or like I'm driving the car too, dad, or whatever in the back seat. But no, truly, I think he needs confidence and he is helping and he is clearing the space for Papa Raul to do what he's doing. And I think that's massive as well, because if you can get him in the right mental headspace and all of a sudden he starts scoring, watch out. You got a Mexico team that is going to have to be reckoned with, even if there are questions in midfield, even if there are questions at the back.
I think it's safe to say the honeymoon period is over for Mauricio Pochettino with the U.S. men's national team. They had a wonderful January camp, and that all kind of came crashing back to earth this last weekend as the United States lost both of their matches, a last-second loss to Panama, and then pretty badly outplayed by Canada on Sunday, losing 2-1. Armand, they were missing a lot of different pieces. Gold Cup is coming up soon. Is it panic time for the United States?
I wouldn't say it's panic time, Daniel, but I would say that the whole look, when you bring in an international manager like Mauricio Pochettino in a limited timeline, right? The whole issue with the Greg Berhalter departure was the fact that they had wasted 2 years of a coach coming in and being able to implement their plan. You don't have that luxury for Mauricio Pochettino. And that's why I think we've kind of all talked about this. Look, you can experiment on the club level. You can experiment and try these cool things. Musa being your wing back and trying these different tactical patterns. But in reality, guys, we're 15 months away from the World Cup?
Yeah,
like,
well, and how many windows? Not talking about the months. How many windows are
exactly.
there? 4,
we have
maybe?
I think
5?
it's 7, but only one is competitive. In the Gold Cup, you're also not going to have your Club World Cup guys. So
exactly. So you have limited time to make these guys all mesh. You have limited competitive matches to actually mean anything. And I do think there is a point of worry. And I do think that it just, guys, like, I don't know, this might be a very, not so, analytical viewpoint, but were any of you, like, as someone that's like, supports the national team, were any of you guys, like, I know, John, you're unbiased, so maybe not you, but Daniel, were you excited going into this, like, these windows? Because I got a text from a lot of people saying, I didn't realize the U.S. was playing, and these guys are guys who would watch these games week in and week out. I don't really care. There was kind of like apathy for it, and I just feel like that we kind of see that apathy reflected. Like, if the players don't care, then the people, the fans, the atmosphere, like, we saw the atmosphere for the games. And I know that's how it usually is for USA games when they play that first half of the doubleheader when Mexico plays the second half. It always happens. But, like, guys, we're like 15 months away from a World Cup, and it feels like the excitement's at an all-time, like, not all-time low, but just very low.
Armand, we were at the last Nations League, which was in Arlington. We went to both games, right? And there seemed to be a palpable desire from the US. And again, this doesn't show up in the analytics. And I really do hate when people say, oh, someone wanted it more and someone
Yeah.
didn't care, because I think that's a little bit harsh to say people don't care. But the urgency was absolutely not there with the United States in either match. And there seemed to be just a bit of apathy towards the results. Is it understandable? I think so. They've won the last three. The result in this tournament didn't necessarily matter for the United States. However, what does matter is that you are getting a full effort and you are figuring out those spots to mesh. And Armand, like you said, the what worried me most is like the way that they were playing out of the back, the way that they were doing concepts that are the concepts you would do if you are a club manager and you're saying, okay, if we give up a sloppy goal here
Or
or there.
Daniel, or if you were Berhalter and you're building off what you had already had built at that
Sure,
national team level, but
sure.
not when you have 18 months to
It's
get ready
right.
to go for a World Cup.
It's 1 out of 38 games. Maybe if we mess up something coming out of the back and it's a club game, whatever. But they were doing these things against Canada where it's like, where is the urgency on this? You're losing. You need to go score. Like
But
that was the surprise.
I think that took Poch by surprise. I think
Yeah.
Pochettino was surprised that the team wasn't sort of having more urgency, and I think that also the fact that I think this window is a bit of a wake up call for him, you know,
Not bad. Yeah.
because
Yeah.
what I've been saying, my concern about Pochettino is he's never done this before.
Mhm.
You know, you talk about like, oh, well, what does a club manager do? He puts in these concepts. We saw like Juan Carlos Osorio tried with Mexico. He eventually sort of got the mix mostly right, but like for a while there, he was trying to do things, and you're like, yo, I kind of understand what you're saying in this press conference where you're explaining the idea that you wanted to have. Your players are not going to get this in two training sessions. And that was where like I think Osorio really benefited from some time, but also like a major tournament where like a Gold Cup, you get those guys in camp for more than a month. That could be hugely beneficial. And that's where I think like you asked, should we hit the panic button? I think you do after the Gold Cup if they still look like they did in March, because it really wasn't, you know, again, sort of like to be sports radio talk guy, it wasn't good enough, you know, like you hate to sort of give that as your sort of analysis, but like it just fell short of what the expectation is. They've won this tournament every single time it's been played. They go home in fourth this time. And now you've got 2.5 long months to digest, figure out what went wrong for Pochettino to get that taste out of his mouth before they play matches and then have the Gold Cup. So I think it really has ratcheted up the pressure on that tournament where I thought that was going to be the one you kind of sleepwalk through, you're a little apathetic toward. I don't think they have that luxury anymore.
But then do we worry about, I mentioned the highest paying position and quarterback and those sorts of things. Are we worrying about a US result where they were playing without their quarterback? Now, obviously Pulisic was playing, but no Pepe, no Balogun,
But that's
no Robinson. Like those
You had
are
no
huge, huge
fullbacks. You
pieces.
had no fullbacks and no forward, right? As far as like your best options.
Right.
But like that could easily happen before the World Cup. I mean, we see those absences happen all the time. They're not going to get to the World. No, you know, no team, or maybe if only a few teams are going to have their preferred starting 11 because guys get hurt, guys get sick. There's going to be travel issues with this World Cup, unfortunately, right? Like weird things are going to happen, and you have to adjust and you have to have that depth. The US, in theory, is a big enough team in CONCACAF with enough players playing in these top clubs to do that. So, yes, I think it's totally fair to say, man, maybe if you have a number nine who's actually finishing off opportunities, you're talking about a totally different scenario. And I think you are, especially when you look at the chances that were missed in that first game against Panama. But at the same time, the expectation needs to be that you could overcome those absences.
One real quick note before we move on, Diego Luna. I wanted to mention his name really quickly because I thought that if there was one positive to take from this, it was like, wow, this guy looks like a player who could actually be a contributing factor. Now, is Lucho Acosta going to come in and take his spot if he gets citizenship? I would put Acosta over Diego Luna at this point. If you need that number 10 spark off the bench, you got to go with Acosta. But I mean, John, it was an impressive moment for him, and he showed he can play on this level.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought he was really good against Canada. It almost was more frustrating, I think, for US fans who said, well, where was this guy against Panama? Where that people were asking to put in Luna, put in Gio Reyna, put in some sort of creative spark, and he got in. So, I mean, I think like in some ways it's a little more frustrating even that it looked like he had, you know, the goods. I do wonder sort of like, I think time with Pulisic would be really good. because I don't think that relationship is fully fleshed out. We saw Pulisic really struggle to get touches, to be on the ball in that Canada game. So I think you want to make sure that if you put Luna in the starting lineup, that you're not sacrificing opportunities for Pulisic, who is your best player, who does make things happen often. But yeah, I thought it was a really, really good opportunity for him. Every time he's played with the national team so far, he's made it happen. He's been fun to watch. Just still like mind-boggling why they didn't take that kid to the Olympics, huh?
Yeah, and one thing I wanted to add about the Luna thing, I mean, they wanted to bring him on if the game went to extra time. Man, Pochettino said it. He
That's
said
fair.
if the game went to extra time, wanted to bring him on. But that to me is kind of like you need to go for the win when you have the opportunity to go for the win. Like you can't rest on your laurels and wait for extra time because as we saw with Cecile, a magical moment can happen with Cecile Waterman, and we saw that with Matt Turner being out of position. So like overall, I think Luna is excellent. I think is a fantastic player, and we need some creative minds like that coming off the bench for the U.S. or even starting if they need to be starting.
The third member of CONCACAF that deserves talking about, although Panama does as well, but we're going to talk about
Oh, not the
Canada.
finalists? Not the runner-up?
By the way,
Panama says, "Why you say f me for it, man?"
yeah,
I'm getting Thomas Christensen on the phone right now.
right, yeah.
We
Well,
take him.
let's talk about Canada though. They had a nice tournament overall. I would say they beat the United States in the third place game, played well against Mexico in the semifinals. John's giving a face here, but what is, John, the ceiling that we can rightfully expect for Canada right now, coming off their last two international tournaments? This one's not quite as big as like the Copa America, but
They got third place?
they seem they'd take third place in the World Cup, right?
You would take third place in the World Cup. You take fourth place in Copa America. I don't think this was a good tournament for Canada.
Really?
I don't.
Why?
No. Canada went into this tournament saying our expectation is to win this tournament. They finished third. That's not,
Okay.
if you're going to say the US's standard is they need to win this tournament, then why isn't it Canada's? Why should Canada's expectation be that much lower than the US? It's good if they beat the US by 1 goal.
Yeah, but I think you have to look at the performances. And if you look at the performance in that first game, Canada was playing very well against Mexico. They were holding most of the
Yeah, and
possession. They had more attacking chances than Mexico did. They slept walk through the first minute. Like if that goal doesn't happen and they don't win, whatever. But
right.
they responded to that moment. They got punched in the face and they responded to that moment, played well. Yes, Mexico ended up winning the game. Could have been tied. If that got to 1-1, I think that Canada would have gotten
listen,
the
man.
result.
I think like you're asking what's their ceiling, what's their expectation. To me, it's not that different than the U.S. You have Jonathan David, an informed forward who scored in the third place game, who's gonna go to a big club that we're all excited about this summer. You have Alphonso Davies, although he went off in the third place game, who's playing at that. You like when you go club for club or whatever you want to do. Why shouldn't they match up with the U.S. at this point? It's been 25 years now since they've won a major trophy. They won the Gold Cup in 2000. They haven't won a trophy since. And the expectation since, I would say, the 2022 World Cup qualification cycle was that they win one of these trophies. The Gold Cup, the Nations League, they haven't done it. So I don't quite understand why this would be a good tournament for them if they finish in third place. You're not pressing the panic button. Like it's not the same vibe as the US, right? You're bummed. Yes, you had a decent performance against Mexico. Things didn't go your way. But like, I don't know, man. The US also had a okay performance against Panama. They had one moment as well that went wrong.
Well, I think
I don't think
what
it's
I should say is what I like and what I really enjoy watching about Canada is that more than any other team, it feels like they have taken on the identity of their manager. And if you said this is a team that is playing with an FU mentality, with a we're going to make life hell on you mentality. Canada used to play kind of in an apologetic manner in the past and as a plucky underdog. And it doesn't feel like they are playing as a plucky
right.
underdog
But
anymore. They're going to put in the
I,
first
I
half. They're
agree.
going to get the yellow cards.
And I think that sort and the physicality they showed against Mexico was the same physicality that they showed against Mexico in the last World Cup qualification cycle where they won those games in Edmonton, those magical moments. And like I guess like my question is just when does Panama's question too, when does Canada actually take the next step? When does Panama actually take the next step? Because otherwise we're just talking about a region where that's sort of like, oh, the US and Mexico win every tournament. That's true. Right now, that's true. And I think like until Canada breaks through that, I wouldn't say, oh, this tournament is a success if they finish in third place, right? I think they had a good, I definitely agree that the tactical concepts are there. I think Jesse Marsh is doing a very good job with the team. I think they're a very good national team. But what you're saying is totally correct. It looks like they are starting to play with a tactical idea that can take them to new heights. Okay, that's been true for many years. That was true under John Herdman. Get to the heights. I don't know why is third place good for this team?
How was that true though, other John Herdman? Like I never had expectations for
They
Canada.
were the top team in World Cup qualification. That was on
But
you, man. They won more games in World Cup qualification in that cycle than any team in the region, more than Mexico, more than the United States. I
yeah,
I, I don't.
but when they were playing those games, they never felt safe. It was kind of like always wondering, oh, the devil's
Yes,
around the
it
corner.
did. When they
Like
in those games in Edmonton, man, when they beat Mexico, when they beat Costa Rica, when like they've had bobbles as well, like every team. Like, them not qualifying for the Nations League Final Four whenever Jamaica went to Toronto and popped them in the mouth was pretty ridiculous. But like that was a team that qualification run. Remember, they had to go in a full round earlier. They had to play Haiti. First of all, they had to go to Haiti. I think they might be the last team that went to Haiti before everything had to shut down because of the government situation. Then they couldn't play at home because of COVID-19. Canada would not let them play at home. So they ended up playing, I think it was in Chicago. I think they played in Bridgeview, man. That
yeah,
was a difficult run, and they looked very impressive when they actually were able to play at home. What's their ceiling? To me, it sounds like I think their ceiling is higher than you think it is, which is like, good job, boys. No, I think they should be winning a CONCACAF trophy under Jesse Marsh. And I think their expectation, man, the Club World Cup really changes the dynamic for the
yeah.
Gold Cup, right? Because it's like you would say they should win the Gold Cup. But if you don't have your best player, you're gonna say, oh, well, we don't have our best player, don't have our best player, we don't have our best player. So I just think that yes, everything I think we're both on the same page. Like, yes, Canada's moving in the right direction. Yes, they reflect what Marsh is trying to do. Obviously, they're fighting, punching above their weight when it comes to like, wow, they're hanging with Argentina in the Copa America. That's amazing. I don't think it's as amazing to say, oop, they played as well as Mexico and lost in a CONCACAF Nations League semifinal.
I think that no, I mean that's fair, and I think that if anything, it does show the progression of the country as a whole to be saying, hey, which I think is rightly what you are pushing forward is like, hey, are you satisfied with this or are you not? And I certainly don't think Jesse Marsh is. So you got to give him a lot of credit for
Well,
that.
yeah, and before we hear from Armand briefly on Canada, I just want to say, like going into this tournament as well, no country except for Canada had their preferred back line. They have St. Clair as the goalkeeper. They had Davies, Bombito, Cornelius, and Johnston all healthy. No other country had that. The U.S. was missing Robinson. Des still hasn't come back yet. Panama had a center back suspended, Fidel Escobar, although he didn't end up starting in the final either. Mexico had Cesar Montes suspended. So, like, Canada has this base now, but for many years that was their issue. The back line was terrible. Now you look at that unit and you're like, man, that's a pretty good back line. So I think that overall, you're looking at a team that yeah, I just want to expect more from. And I think to say like, oh, this was a good tournament because they didn't finish fourth, I
Fair.
don't think so.
Anything to add, Armand?
I mean, when you think about Canada,
Guess not.
right? When you think about Canada, right? As a team and as a group, part of my language, but they talk a lot of shit to be proud to be a third place team. Like as a
But that's
team,
Jesse Marsh. That's taking
but
on the
but but you
mentality
but
of the
you but you
manager.
but
But
look,
so
you can't
what, man? If you
but you
set the standard, you're right.
but you
You're
you
right.
can't you can't be a shit talking team. I mean, you can shit talk when you're down, but when they have the players, they have the talent. I'd probably say their talent pool is comparable to both. I would probably say U.S. and Mexico to a degree. It's in the same range. Would I say it's equal? No, but at some point, you have to put your big boy pants on and be like, all right, you finished first in World Cup qualifying. You come with expectations now. You need to actually produce results. You need to actually produce things. And win games. They beat the US who rotated, by the way. Let's not forget that. They rotated their squad. They beat a rotated US squad Danny, you mentioned it, that they weren't healthy all the way as well too. That's the crowding moment.
Listen, man, listen. Panama, they're in the last Nations League final, and they're in the last nation, and then they're in the last Gold Cup final. When's the last time Canada was in one of the finals? You can go back to Nations League and they lost.
Heading over to MLS really quickly, guys. It was a full weekend of MLS. We're not really going to talk too much about, but we had some big news coming down. If you had March 24th as the date of your first MLS coach firing in the pool, you are taking home the money because Laurent Courtois, maybe, oh, did John have that one? Damn it. Laurent Courtois was let go today, given the axe by CF Montreal. The numbers aren't good. Now, they start the season on a 7-game road trip. They have exactly 1 point from their first 5 games. They have exactly 2 goals, and they have exactly 0 goals in their last 4 matches. They lost 3-0 at Nashville SC this last weekend. Armand, you've got your finger on the pulse of MLS. Was this a move that was coming? Is this a little bit crazy? Like, what's going on here? Was Montreal right to make the decision quick?
No, they're absolutely stupid. And that's why they haven't done anything ever since Wilfred not like and when everyone
Yay.
does something, they leave, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Like if you look, you give a guy Laurent Courtois who comes in, you have to give him time to build something, right? You have to build something. So promptly he gets a year, and then he gets, the first 5 games of a 7-game road trip,
They
which
made the
Montreal does
playoffs
every
last year,
year.
by the way.
They didn't make the
I know.
playoffs. They made
The
the
wild card
postseason.
round. Sure.
They made the postseason.
Sure.
That's your caveat. So,
Well,
uh,
they won 5 out of, I should
right.
say they won 5 out of their last 7 games to end
Right.
2024.
And
Clearly
the thing
the
is,
boat was headed in the right direction.
and the thing is, with MLS, the league can grow in whatever way, improve travel, all this stuff. Playing on the road is still difficult in MLS, especially when you have 7 straight road games to start the year. No team is going to be, if a team ends up with 6 points starting out, that's a success. Like,
Yeah.
legitimately, that's a success. So when you look at CF Montreal, they don't
So
spend
you
much
think they
on
should have
players.
waited 2 more weeks to see if they win both those last 2 games
Yeah,
and then it's a
right.
success?
No. But like, if you're on a 7-game road trip, like it's gonna be hard to produce results. I would have given them longer. I would have given them a leash probably to at least if they wanted to make it until midway. For me, you don't give them a good roster. They were out Veroni, who's been out. He's their DP.
Yes.
They acquired Jalen Neal, their center back. He's been out as well. They haven't had full complement of rosters. If you look at the roster, I mean, you'd probably say it's one of our bottom teams in MLS, and he's trying to build these concepts, try and play entertaining like football. At the same time, like, you have to give a guy grace. You can't just be like, all right, we're just gonna go and fire this guy and bring another guy in. What is this, our 11th coach in 13 seasons? Like, that's
Yeah,
crazy.
I think that 2 things can be true. I think that they're wildly underperforming where they should be, and that Courtois hasn't done a very good job this season. And you can say, ownership of this club historically doesn't give you much reason to think that they're going to be right in this decision and that they're going to be right in whoever they bring in to fix this, right? Yeah, and you're totally right to say that when there have been good coaches there, they've left or they've been booted out or they haven't gotten on with management. This is something that we talk about Montreal as a market that I just think it's a great city. I think there's a lot of soccer there. You look at the Canadian national team players that have come out of Montreal, it's a really impressive list. And yet, when's the last time that they did something? The last time they did something exciting, they were the Impact. And even then, that was like a bit of a surprise,
Well,
like the CONCACAF Champions Cup run where they had the Cam Johnson goal against America.
Yeah, the Drogba
That
years were
was,
fun.
And I mean,
yeah, I
even
mean,
the
there've been
Nancy
some
years
fun
were fun.
moments.
Well, the Nancy year, excuse me. Our years were fun. I mean, if you look back at when they played the Big O, that playoff series against Toronto in 2016. I was watching that when I think was it Cam Porter? I think it was who scored that goal against
Crazy.
Pachuca.
Oh yeah, I said Cam
Yeah,
Johnson. That's
yeah.
my bad.
That's a NBA player, brother. But you see the crowd, you see the excitement, you see like what that market can bring, and the talent. Ismail Coney, we forgot, he's sold to Watford. Alistair Johnston as well. Like, all
Brother,
these,
the talent, when I'm looking at the roster right now, it's like, okay, they signed this 18-year-old
Dante
Ukraine.
Seeley's starting for them.
That's what I was going to say is Dante Seeley
he was
could
cut
take
by
an
FC
FC Dallas
Dallas.
team that is wingers starved for wingers, and Dante Seeley can't make is starting for them. I mean, there's not a player, and you don't want to take transfer market like values as gospel, but there's not a player worth $1 million on the roster. And your big signing is Owusu, who was like not good enough for Toronto. Like, What are you expecting from this guy? And he doesn't even get a home game. And then you look at, okay, you let this guy go. What coach is going to want to coach there now that's worth anything? Maybe a guy who can't get another job, Armand, but like what coach is going to look at this and say, "Oh yeah, this is a place where I can have success and I'm going to be given the right resources."
Maybe maybe former FC Dallas interim manager Peter Luxon, who needs to revive his career.
I tell you what, man, even if I was working for a bit of an eccentric boss, let's say, I'd still take living in Montreal for a year or two.
Well, that's the shame too, man, is because it should be, in theory, one of the, it's never going to be the biggest MLS market, but it should be one of the best MLS markets in the sense of like, that's the road trip everyone wants to take in the summer to go see a game in Montreal. And it just doesn't seem like they're really
No,
putting that effort in.
even the thing, and like we're definitely on the outside looking in, but like the fact that they took the Impact name away, the relationship with the supporters, there was one of the longtime supporters groups. I don't remember how long it was, but it had been more than a decade that this group had shown up supporting, and they disbanded before the year. Like, where is that sort of like connection with the city that should exist in a place like Montreal, that people are excited, that people are maybe after 6 games, in Liga MX, I'm used to this, right? After 6 games, you are like, why is the manager still here? Why can't they? But also you're looking at a much shorter relationship that the supporters have, putting pressure on the team and producing often results with those expectations. It's just not there, and it's a shame.
A really weird story last week that listeners to this show have known about for a little bit of time. And John, you've been all over this one. Club World Cup coming to America this summer, the expanded every 4-year edition. And the schedule, of course, has already been out. They've been selling tickets. Leon with James Rodriguez and Guardado, they were supposed to play Chelsea, Flamengo, and Esperance de Tunis. I think I said that correctly. Well, they're not anymore because they got booted out based on the laws around laws, by the way, that we've known that of the multi-ownership. Pachuca owns
their own regulations, right?
Their own regulations. What's going on here?
Yeah, well, I mean, both these teams are owned by Grupo Pachuca. When the regulations came out in the fall, I feel like a bit of a tattletale because I have been on the story for a while. Like I pulled up the regulations and I'm looking through and I'm like, well, these teams are definitely owned by the same group. At the draw, people were asking, hey, what's going on here? My issue is this. I think FIFA screwed this up. And I think it's because of this. As of whenever I recorded a TikTok on Friday when they announced this, I could still buy tickets to see Chelsea versus Leon for $90. Except as you mentioned, that game is not happening. It's been promoted that Leon would take part in this tournament. Leon bought players, James Rodriguez, as you mentioned, to participate in this tournament. But we all saw this coming in the fall. So why was this allowed to sort of fester? And who gets the spot? I think it's like a massive mess that FIFA has made for themselves. I mean, the other thing, sporting wise, it is smart, I think, to have a rule saying, hey, if your group owns both teams, you can't have 2 of them in or 3 of them in if you're Red Bull or Citigroup or whatever. People in Mexico have been very confused by this. There's fans that are like, well, Red Bull exists. Man City has multiple teams. Yeah, the other teams aren't in the tournament. The problem is that they're both in the tournament. It's not that just multi-ownership exists. It's that they're both in this tournament. Yes, those teams exist. And yes, you should have, but they actually did earn this spot on the field. Pachuca won CONCACAF Champions Cup. Leon won CONCACAF Champions Cup. They didn't send players between each other to try and, get in this tournament. If you're FIFA, it's kind of smart to have this on the books. But you didn't have to put it in there. You did. So why did you let this fester? I just don't understand the timeline.
Yeah, it's the total like just, oh, this is fine, guy sitting in the house on fire, and you just knew that the receipt would come at some point. Armand, who's gonna fill the spot? What do you think's gonna happen here?
Well, I wonder if it's gonna be even sporting.
Happen.
If you think it's going to be Ronaldo versus Messi, Al Nassr.
I don't think it's going to be Ronaldo, but I think it's going to be a Saudi Arabian team because I don't think that Ronaldo can't come to the United States.
Okay, so John, let me ask you this: would you take the runner-up of a tournament that Leon played in, or would you take Alajuelense or one of those other teams?
It's going to be America. It's 100% going to be Club America. I mean, I'm not reporting that. That's just my guess.
Whoa, yeah, that's breaking news right here.
On
the Hex.
No. Yeah, this is going to get aggregated somewhere.
Right, yeah.
Club America.
Get some hits on TUDN, yeah.
Club America is going to take the spot because they're the top team right now in FIFA's rankings of clubs that's not in the tournament.
Okay.
And America is a club that, maybe outside of if Ronaldo showed up, is a bigger economic driver than maybe any other team that they could possibly add right now, including some of the European teams, including some of the South American teams. What's going to get a little funky with that is that there's a rule that says if a team has won multiple titles, then you go to the rankings, but they can't, the allocation is only two teams per country. So FIFA is going to have to make a justification because there's a Brazilian team that basically got left out so that River and Boca could both get in, but they got let out on that technicality. So
Hmm.
how are you going to convince? Basically, no matter who you put in, you're going to make people mad because if it's not a Mexican club, Mexico's mad. If it's not a Costa, if it's Alajuelense, if it's not them, they're mad still, which they brought this case to FIFA. If you put in America, the Brazilians are mad because they feel their team should be in. So I don't know, man.
Well, and
It's a
they've
problem of their own making, and the fact that they've kicked the can down the road this far is pretty shocking, to be honest.
and they've painted themselves into a corner because again, if it's okay, whatever that team is in Argentina, okay, a Racing or whoever it is, look, it may be interesting, but it's not going to sell out. Okay, Chelsea is supposed to play this team TBD at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. They need if Club America plays, it's a sellout. If Club America doesn't play, who knows? They've got to play Flamengo at Camping World Stadium in Orlando, the big football stadium. That's not
That'd be fun.
that's not
Those games
selling
would be
out.
fun with America, man.
Of course, it would be a Brazilian team versus
Brazilians in
Club
Orlando,
America.
Brazilians in Orlando,
Oh,
Flamengo, Brazilians
Whoa.
in Orlando. It'll get a good crowd.
right. But if it's
But yes,
Huracan,
and there's some games that are going to get terrible crowds. I mean, some of these games are going to be really, really poorly attended, I think. But yeah, the whole tournament, we'll see, man. We've always been a little bit skeptical about this tournament, and the fact that this decision is getting made so late in the game, to me, only adds to the sort of, well, let's just say Orlando might be the right place for it.
for topic number 6, we like to have a little fun around here, and all of us have done a little bit of broadcasting in our different channels. But it was really interesting watching what happened over the weekend in CONCACAF Nations League and the difference between just the different nuances of how different cultures broadcast different games. And I am continually fascinated by the TUDN broadcast because, for one, John, we texted about this a little bit. Paramount Plus is choosing not to put the games on TV. They're driving them to maybe March Madness had something to do with it, with CBS having the March Madness. But look, during those games of March Madness, there wasn't anything on CBS Sports Network, so it's not like they couldn't have put those on. They chose to put them on their streaming service, which I get. So I was watching a lot of TUDN, and John, tell us a little bit about the different things that TUDN will put on the broadcast and what they're trying to do
Well,
to be more like Azteca.
yeah, that's the thing, man. I think all of this is sort of trying to catch Azteca, which, especially for the national team games, has a very jovial. They'll find people in the crowd to sort of poke fun at. It's almost always good natured. Now and then you get one where you're like, okay,
You need to
but for the
watch a
most
game on
part,
TUDN,
these
though. If you're not watching, watch it.
yeah. So now they're trying to imitate that, and they have a live cam of a fan in the stands. Now, he's usually in the stands. It's like a guy in a luchador mask, and he's like goofing around, and like sometimes he himself will like suddenly have like a couple, and they do like a kiss cam. You're
Right.
getting cutaways live during games for this to happen.
And
But
big
after the
moments in the
game,
games.
big moments. After the game, maybe the biggest moment, where the players are celebrating winning, all of a sudden that guy was also on the field celebrating. The players clearly had no idea what was happening. And
They were
the
looking
guy
around for
was like trying
security,
to,
like, did this guy get on the
well, I mean, because
field?
he is a fan, right? He's supposed to be like the fan, and he's dressed up like as a fan, and it's just like all of a sudden there he is, live shot, trying to dap up Alexis Vega, and he's like, "All right."
And then they were during the same broadcast, they were putting up with 1 minute left in stoppage time and Mexico clinging to the championship winning 2-1 lead over Panama. They are showing or sorry, Canada was clinging to the lead over the United States, they're showing, is Scarlett Johansson Canadian or American? They would be putting up these random celebrities and doing a quiz of where they. So they're asking Marcelo Balboa, like, is she Canadian or is she American? And they're doing this
How'd
in
he do?
stoppage. They're doing this in stoppage time of like the game. It's
Do you
just
think
wild.
do you think they were like, hey, we've got two more, we've got to cram in there. We need to make sure
We
that we
gotta
get
get
through all the celebrities that I mean, we made these graphics,
They
so
had Mike Myers. They had Scarlett Johansson.
he's Canadian.
Yeah, thank you. And so that was great. The matches, like you said, they are cutting to kiss cams, and they're doing this versus during Liga MX matches as well. Like,
Yeah, oh yeah. It's a little looser for the Liga MX, which sometimes you want that because
right,
sometimes
right.
look, I've watched my fair share of Puebla Mazatlan in my life. I think like one other thing to note about the broadcast Armand is like Thierry Henry's presence on the
I was
CBS
going to mention
desk
that, yeah.
makes like a massive difference because not only did you get the celebration where Cecilia Waterman jumps up with him and yells in his face, what a weird thing too. I think it was a great moment and we'll like truly remember it forever. It'll be like a forever CONCACAF moment, but like his celebration was like, I'm angrily gonna tell you that
Henri
you're my
looked at him
hero.
like what the hell is happening?
Well, it really, I think like live, it seemed like that he was gonna like confront him for something he said. So I'm sure they're all
Right.
going through their files like, did I disrespect Cecilia Waterman at some point? Like, doesn't seem like something I would do. Like I think they were just kind of running through. But the fact that he was there, I think also really influences a wise strategy that they had where Waterman came to the desk after that game and then they continued that. So Jonathan David was on the desk after Canada's win, and then they got Raul Jimenez to, speaking English, he speaks good English, on the desk after the Mexico game, which was special as well because I think that gives him the platform to talk about what he's been through with the serious head injury, the skull fracture, and all those different things. So I think Henri's presence just as like a legend, but also as like a guy who I think takes his broadcasting gig quite seriously, just added a little bit to the kind of TV side of the Nations League.
Yeah, I mean, I think when it comes to so, can we go to the end for a second? One thing I like is the bobblehead ratings they have when they rate the game.
Oh
Oh
yeah.
yeah, that
Uruguay.
everyone rates
Ev-
the game and then the
Everyone rates the game.
afición rates it. But I have seen, I don't remember which one it was, but there was one where the afición gave it like 200. And
Yeah,
that's not.
yeah.
They rate out of 10 and all of a sudden it was like this was a 200 from no.
But it's funny because you'll be sitting there like this game is trash, and then they'll have like the ratings up there, and it'll be like 5, 5, 5, 5, 4, like with all the commentators and stuff. I love that feature of
That's a
their
throwback to
thing.
Daniel and I used to well, I think the statute of
Oh, the
limitations has passed.
the
The
footy
the
max, the
uh
max footy forums. Yes.
the soccer torrent factory, and then people would rate games without spoilers, so you knew like if everyone's given this game a 10, I should download it and watch it because you used to be able to avoid spoilers back in the day. We didn't have the apps like we do now where half the time I'm watching a game on television I still get it spoiled because I have the notifications up from my friends at FOTMob. Shout out to the guys at FOTMob, but not a sponsor of the Hex, but could be.
Yeah, yeah, please sponsors. I did think though, yeah, it was just super interesting to see kind of like you can see what the different types of cultures around the broadcasting do, right? Where okay, with Paramount Plus vis-a-vis CBS, they have all the experience in the world of how do we set up a good, desk show? How do they know how to get the talent there to make the clips, have them go viral versus on TUDN, it's just bobblehead ratings of stuff. A guy in a luchador mask is literally on the pitch as Mexico is celebrating. It's just wild ass, and I love it, and I think it's great, and it represents everything about CONCACAF. That's
One
awesome.
one thing that I thought was great though, man, that we about the Cecilia Waterman moment is they had Kate Abdo just live translating everything Cecilia
That's
Waterman is
awesome.
saying. In English, you have Henri who also speaks Spanish. I think attempted to speak Spanish because his wife is
Ooh,
Mexican,
that was
and
rough, man.
it was rough. It was very rough. But you get like, and one thing that I think like leagues like for example like the NBA struggle with is these guys like Henri, they still love these players and players look up to them. They're not like constantly looking down on them, etc. So there's an admiration, there's a respect. I
Mhm.
mean, look at LeBron, for example, and like the guys
Yeah,
on NBA
but
on
don't you
TNT.
feel this is probably another topic, man? But like, don't you feel like how Shaq and Charles and like those guys like are constantly kind of trashing on the product that they're supposed to be
Yep.
sort of like promoting and people are supposedly enjoying? Like Landon Donovan last night, I actually think it's totally fine in this moment to say, hey, national team's not good enough. We used to play with heart. But I do think that like we're moving closer to that in the soccer ecosystem, which hasn't been the case in the US and is the case in places where they don't like international soccer, like England, where it's just like old dudes for the national team constantly criticizing the current
Yep.
team. I'm not sure how you get that line right. I don't know that like a producer or us or like fans have anything to do with it, but I am worried that that line is increasingly we're getting closer and closer to being England when it comes to the national team, and
Not good.
I don't I
Don't
don't
want to be them.
Did you
don't
see,
do
by the
not want.
way, Blas Perez getting into Cello's face after Panama scored? He was like fake punching him and stuff at the desk.
Oh, was it after Panama scored? I thought it was after he correctly identified a Canadian actress.
Yeah, either way, you never know what you're going to see. So they should combine some of those sometimes, like how you'll get ESPN getting their college basketball guys doing an NBA game. TUDN and CBS should combine their guys sometimes. Have Kate Abdo run the desk sometime for TUDN. That would be
I'm sure they'd be thrilled. I'm sure through the end it would be like, yes, we
yes,
will
yeah,
take Kate and Henri and
yeah.
swap you back a couple
And we'll
other.
we'll give you Kikin Fonseca.
They
Well,
did a great segment talking about wild TUDN segments. They had Jesse Marsh doing Mexican Spanish, and I'm pretty sure that if you go back and look, you can find Jesse cussing in Spanish on that broadcast and clip it, and it would go pretty viral in Mexico, pretty viral in Mexico. But yeah, that was also another. It was Kikin that did the segment, and he was like, "How's your soccer Spanish?" And Jesse, like, amiably playing along. Yeah, he tossed out some funny ones for sure.
Chivas USA days, man. Can't forget those from Jesse Marsh's time. But well,
Yeah, he
that'll
thought
wrap it
he
up.
thought he needed the Spanish and the German, but now he needs the French.
There you go. Yeah. Well, that'll wrap it up for this week. Thanks for listening, everyone. We will be back with plenty of MLS, CONCACAF back to the big game, so we'll be able to preview that. It never stops in the soccer world. So we thank you for listening, and we'll catch you next time.